The argument had been building all week, simmering beneath every tense meeting, every hollow smile, every time Damien Holt dismissed Lena Carter, as if she were just another replaceable employee in his towering empire. But no one expected it to explode the way it did that night inside the glass-walled penthouse hovering above Manhattan, where the lights of the city glittered like scattered diamonds beneath their feet. Damien's assistants lined the walls, pretending not to listen while listening to every word. Security stood at the door, ready for whatever might happen when a billionaire with a reputation for icy control finally snapped. Several reporters, invited for a carefully curated charity announcement, were frozen in place, watching the chaos unravel with wide, eager eyes, as if history had decided to break right in front of them. Damien's voice boomed first, sharp enough to cut through the classical music humming from the hidden speakers. "You think you can walk into my office and accuse me of something you don't understand?" He barked, his jaw tight, his perfectly controlled image slipping at the edges. His tie hung slightly crooked, his normally immaculate hair disrupted from the way he had dragged his fingers through it moments before. It was the smallest sign, but for a man like Damien Holt, it was equivalent to a full-blown panic attack. Lena didn't flinch. She was breathing fast, but her eyes never wavered from his. She wasn't intimidated by the height of the ceiling, the marble floors, or the fact that the man shouting at her was worth billions and could end her career with a whisper. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and uncovered truths she could no longer ignore. "You don't get to control the narrative this time," she fired back, stepping forward even though security subtly inched closer. "You can silence your board, your PR team, your lawyers, but you're not going to silence me." Murmurs rippled across the room. This was the intern he hired 6 months ago? The girl who worked late nights and barely spoke? Now she stood there challenging him in front of half the city's press? No one knew what to do, whether to intervene or watch the empire crack open. Damien moved closer, towering over her, his voice dropping into a dangerous whisper. "You have no idea what you're playing with." Lena's heartbeat pounded in her ears, but she didn't step back. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, the confrontation, the truth, the fear, everything. But nothing prepared her for the raw anger and desperation flickering in Damien's eyes. It was the first hint that he wasn't yelling because she was wrong. He was yelling because she was right. "You don't scare me," she said softly, and the words hit him harder than the shouting did. "You should be scared," he growled, "because if you say one more reckless thing, you won't be saving anyone. Not even yourself." The room fell silent. Assistants froze mid-breath. Flashing cameras hovered at the edges, waiting for permission to snap. Damien had mastered the art of never losing control in front of witnesses, but tonight he was unraveling in real time. Lena swallowed. Her voice shook slightly, but the determination underneath held steady. "You're terrified of the truth getting out," she said. "Not because of your reputation, not because of your company, but because of what you did." Damien's eyes flared, and for a split second, something like guilt crossed his face. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, hidden behind the cold billionaire facade he wore like armor. "What I did," he repeated, laughing bitterly. "You think you know anything about me? I know enough." "You know nothing," he snapped. "You found a few files and suddenly you think you have the whole story? You think you can break into my private archives and walk away untouched?" "I didn't break into anything," she replied. "Someone wanted me to find the truth, and I did." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Damien narrowed his eyes, studying her. "Who?" he demanded. "That doesn't matter," she said, and he took one step forward, fists clenched. Instantly, 2 security guards moved as if expecting she might be in danger, though they weren't sure from whom. "Everything matters," he hissed. "Every person you spoke to, every document you saw, every detail you think you understand. You have no comprehension of the consequences." Lena felt her pulse racing, but she stood her ground. "Then tell me the truth," she challenged. "Right now. Tell all of us." Gasps echoed from the clustered reporters. This wasn't the sanitized charity press night they expected. This was raw, unfiltered drama. A billionaire cornered. An employee fearless enough to poke the bear. Damien's jaw tightened. "This is your last warning, Lena." But she wasn't backing down. She took a slow, steady breath, knowing she was seconds away from detonating the truth he had buried for years. She had spent nights sifting through documents that didn't make sense, stories that didn't align, witness statements that contradicted each other. And then, she had found the missing piece. A single detail that tied everything together. A detail that only someone close to Damien would ever know. He moved closer, lowering his voice again. "Whatever you think you know, it will destroy you. Not me." "Maybe," she said, "but it's time the world knew who you really are." His expression flickered. Panic, anger, fear, all tangled together. "Say one more word," he warned. And then she did. One sentence. One truth. One weapon he never expected her to have. As the words left her lips, the room froze. Reporters forgot to breathe. Security halted mid-step. Even the city lights beyond the windows seemed to dim. Damien Holt, powerful, untouchable, calculating, went completely still. His face drained of color. His breath caught. He looked at her not with anger but with something far deeper, far darker, far more terrified. Because Lena hadn't just confronted him. She had spoken the one sentence that proved she knew his darkest secret. The one he had spent a lifetime hiding. The words had barely left Lena's mouth when silence swallowed the room whole. It wasn't the kind of pause people took when they were shocked. It was deeper. Like the entire penthouse had forgotten how to breathe. Damien Holt, the man who could stare down senators and CEOs without blinking, now stood completely frozen. His pupils dilated and his jaw slack, as if Lena had reached into his chest and ripped out something he'd buried decades ago. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Assistants stared at him, reporters glanced at each other, and security subtly shifted, unsure whether to protect Lena from Damien or protect Damien from the truth itself. The city lights outside the windows flickered across Damien's face, exposing every crack in the armor he usually wore like second skin. His hands, always steady, trembled slightly at his sides. "You don't know what you're talking about," he finally whispered. But even that came out uneven, nothing like the commanding tone he was known for. Lena didn't back away. Her heart was pounding, but she held firm. "I know enough," she said. "And you know I do." His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard. Rage didn't come. Denial didn't come. Instead, something far more haunting washed over him. Fear. Real fear. A look no one in the room had ever seen on the face of Damien Holt. A man who allegedly didn't fear anything. Reporters looked at each other. Cameras, which had been lowered moments before, quietly lifted again. Some instinct deep inside them told them this wasn't just a workplace dispute or a dramatic argument. This was history. This was the unraveling of a billionaire whose life had been meticulously constructed to be flawless. "Everyone out," Damien suddenly snapped, his voice sharp but shaky. "Now." No one moved. It was the first time his command didn't automatically send people scattering. He tried again, louder. "I said everybody out." But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. This wasn't a man in control. This was a man cornered by something bigger than his empire. Lena raised a hand slightly. "You wanted an audience," she said. "Tonight was supposed to be about transparency, wasn't it? About your new philanthropic direction?" Her tone was calm, but her words cut straight through him. "So let's be transparent." Damien's eyes narrowed, but he didn't step closer. He couldn't. It was as if her sentence had chained him to the floor. "You don't understand," he murmured. "I understand enough to know you've been hiding a sibling for over 20 years, she said quietly. "A brother no one ever talks about. A brother who vanished after that accident." Gasps shot through the room. Even the people who had worked with Damien for years looked stunned. A brother? Damien Holt was famously the only child of the Holts, the golden heir to the Holt fortune, the genius who built Holt Industries from nothing after his parents died. A brother didn't fit the image. It didn't fit anything. Damien shut his eyes tightly, as if bracing himself against a blow he knew was coming. Lena continued, her voice steady. You paid to erase everything. Hospital records, police reports, witness testimonies. You buried an entire investigation, Damien. But you didn't bury it well enough. His eyes flew open, fury flashing for the first time. But underneath it was panic. You don't know the full story, he said hoarsely. You don't know what really happened that night. Then tell me, Lena challenged. Tell all of us. Damien looked away, jaw clenched so tightly the muscles shook. His breathing was uneven, and for a moment he seemed lost, like he had no idea what to do or say. It was a different kind of vulnerability than anyone expected from him, the kind that didn't belong to a billionaire but to a broken human being trying desperately to keep the past locked away. You think I hid him to protect myself? Damien asked finally, his voice cracking. You think I covered it up because I didn't care? You covered it up because you were guilty, she replied. His head snapped toward her, eyes burning. No, he whispered, because I wasn't. A ripple of confusion swept the room. Lena's brow furrowed. Then why hide it? Damien's gaze darkened. Because no one was supposed to suffer for what happened. Lena didn't blink. But someone did. Damien's breath hitched. Someone did suffer. Everyone in the room understood that now. The sibling Lena mentioned wasn't a rumor. He was real. He was important. And something terrible had happened to him. Lena stepped closer, her voice softer. You didn't just lose him, Damien. You destroyed him. And you couldn't live with it. He winced as if she had slapped him. You weren't supposed to know any of this, he said quietly. I made sure no one ever would. Well, she said, you underestimated the people who cared about the truth. The muscles in his jaw twitched. Who told you? It doesn't matter, she repeated. All that matters is that I know. And you know I'm telling the truth. Damien turned his back for the first time, his shoulders sagging under the weight of a secret that had eaten him alive for years. He pressed his hands against the glass window, staring at the glittering city below, as if the skyline had answers he'd been too afraid to confront. I was supposed to protect him, he whispered. I was supposed to keep him safe. But I failed. What happened? Lena asked, but her tone wasn't accusatory now. It was softer, human. He closed his eyes. The accident wasn't an accident. The entire penthouse erupted with murmurs. Lena's breath caught. Then what was it? Damien turned around, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked like a man who had been carrying a ghost on his back for his entire life. His voice broke when he spoke. It was a setup, he said, and he wasn't the target. The room froze. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. You were. Damien nodded slowly. And the person who set it up, he continued, is someone still inside this company. Now everything made sense. The secrecy, the cover-up, the fear in his eyes earlier. Damien Holt didn't hide the past because he was guilty. He hid it because the truth was more dangerous than the lie. The moment word leaked from the penthouse, the story spread across Manhattan like wildfire. Before midnight, every major network had already pushed out breaking alerts. By morning, Damien Holt's name dominated headlines, social feeds, and whispered conversations inside boardrooms. Billionaire's hidden brother. The tragedy Holt buried? Corporate cover-up? The world was starving for answers. And for once, Damien couldn't hide behind silence or money. The scandal he had spent decades burying was no longer a ghost haunting him in private. It was now a roaring storm threatening to tear down everything he'd built. His empire trembled. Investors demanded statements. The board threatened emergency meetings. His PR team begged him to deny everything immediately, to blame Lena, to paint her as a disgruntled employee seeking attention. But Damien couldn't. Not this time. He sat in his office, glass walls, chrome finishes, towering over the city he once ruled with unshakable confidence, and felt the weight of years pressing down on him. Every lie, every omission, every time he closed his eyes and saw his brother's face the night everything changed. He could end Lena's career with one press release. Frame her, discredit her, spin the story until the public turned on her completely. It would be easy. It would protect him. But as he replayed the moment she spoke that sentence in the penthouse, the sentence only one other person alive was supposed to know, he realized something unsettling. Lena wasn't trying to destroy him. She was trying to pull him out of a truth he'd been drowning in for years. He didn't understand why. Not yet. But he needed answers. Lena, meanwhile, wasn't hiding. She sat in a coffee shop across from Holt Tower, watching the chaos unfold on news screens, feeling a mixture of fear, guilt, and something deeper she couldn't name. She hadn't expected things to explode like this. She wanted Damien to face the truth, yes, but she hadn't wanted a national scandal. She certainly hadn't wanted to ruin him, but she couldn't regret speaking the sentence that shattered him. Someone had to break the cycle. When Damien's assistant approached her hours later, breathless and pale, asking her to come to his private office, Lena didn't hesitate. She walked through the building with cameras flashing from the lobby, employees whispering, security escorting her past reporters gathered outside the elevators. She entered his office. Damien stood by the window, his back to her, staring at the skyline as if afraid of what he'd see if he looked her in the eyes. "Close the door," he said quietly. She did. "Everyone thinks I should destroy you," he said. "That you're a threat, a liability, a mistake." Her heart tightened, but she kept her voice calm. "And what do you think?" He turned around slowly, and Lena almost flinched at what she saw. Damien looked nothing like the polished billionaire who'd commanded every room he entered. His shoulders were tense. His eyes were tired, haunted. His tie was loose, his suit jacket tossed aside. He looked human. "Why did you say it?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know that sentence?" Lena inhaled deeply. This was the moment she'd been avoiding. "Because your brother wasn't just a victim in your story," she said softly. "He was part of mine too." Damien blinked. Confusion flashed across his face. "What are you talking about?" She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. "Your brother, Michael, wasn't alone in the hospital that night. He wasn't the only one hurt." Damien froze. "My mother was there too," she continued. "She was the nurse who tried to save him." The world in the room shifted. Damien's breath caught. "My mother was the one he spoke to before he slipped into the coma," Lena said, her voice cracking. She heard his final lucid words. "And those were the exact words I said to you in the penthouse." Damien's knees nearly buckled. He gripped the edge of his desk to stay upright. "No," he whispered. "That's impossible. Those words were... They were only between us. Only he and the nurse at his bedside," Lena said. "My mother." Damien stared at her, speechless. Slowly, painfully, the pieces connected in his mind. "My mother kept those words locked away for years," Lena said. "She wrote them in a letter she left for me before she passed. She said she couldn't carry the weight anymore. She said someone needed to know the truth about what really happened and who was really responsible." Damien closed his eyes, overwhelmed. "You weren't responsible for the accident, Damien," Lena continued gently. "Your brother knew that. He tried to tell you before he lost consciousness. Those words, his last message, they weren't a confession of blame. They were a warning." Damien opened his eyes again, tears burning behind them. "A warning," he said. "Don't trust the one beside you." Damien's entire world tilted on its axis. Those words, the ones Lena had repeated in the penthouse, were the same words that had tormented him for decades, the last thing his brother ever spoke before being taken into surgery. For years, Damien believed Michael meant him, that he had failed his brother, that Michael blamed him. But the sentence meant something else. And Lena had proof. "My mother wrote everything she heard," Lena whispered. "And she mentioned another detail. Something the investigators ignored because the report was buried." Damien stared at her, waiting. "She said there was a second voice in the room that night," Lena said. "Someone arguing with your brother before the accident. Someone he didn't trust." Damien's blood went cold. "Who?" Lena hesitated. "Someone inside Holt Industries." Damien staggered back a step, the truth landing with suffocating weight. Lena stood and walked toward him. You spent years burying a secret that wasn't even yours to carry. You hid the truth to protect a company that was built on lies someone else created. And you punished yourself for something you didn't do. He stared at her, his voice breaking. Why are you helping me? Because my mother believed you were worth saving, Lena said softly. And because I think she was right. Damien exhaled shakily, the walls he'd built around himself finally cracking. Not from fear, but from understanding. For the first time in his life, the secret didn't own him. Truth did. Lena did. And the sentence that once haunted him had become the key to rewriting everything. His past, his guilt, and the man he now had the chance to become. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring tales by CJ.